Okay, so the purpose of this quick little demo is to show you how to take a raster type image. We can think of the image that I've loaded here as just a satellite remote sensing image or an image from a drone or something like that, a single picture. We know that it's a drawing, and that's fine, and you can use something like this as well. But the whole intent is to given an image like this, how do we make vector files of it, and what's it look like when we do it? So you're going to see a couple things. One, you're going to see how we create feature classes, create the container for it, and actually go in and do some editing. But that's not the real intent. The real intent is to understand how the geodatabase works, how we actually digitize and create new features given a raster image in this particular case. So it's a little bit about digitizing. It's mainly about the data structure and what's going on inside our geodatabase and the creation of feature classes, and then what's inside the attribute table when we do this. One of the first things to think about is, what are we trying to create? We normally think of our data when we're talking about vector data as discrete data. Either something's there or it's not. In this particular case, we have a few things on this image that are there. We have a river, we have some roads, we have some buildings, and we have some vegetative areas or tree areas. So one of the things we need to do, we're going to go into tools and we're going to create a feature class. So if I just go into my toolbox here, hit tools, create feature class, you can always read the help associated. There's a tooltip that tells you what this stuff does. In this particular case, I'm going to create a feature class. It takes a moment. And we're going to call this, like, where do we want the data to go? We're going to call this river. And the geometry type in this case is going to be a polyline. Normally we would specify the coordinate system we want this to be in. In this case, this is just a basic image, and I'm not doing that because this is not aligned. But if I had a remote sensing image or something else and I wanted to line things up with, say, WGS84 or UTM grid zone something, or a state plane coordinate system, I could specify that. And I'm just going to hit run. Okay, so now I want to add the data. So if I go into add data to my map, navigate to where I saved my information. I've got a geodatabase, so when we create a project, it creates a geodatabase for us. So inside this project that I have, you'll see the river feature class. That the icon here is a little polygon looking icon, and I can say add that feature class. All I've got is the feature class with nothing in it, right? I didn't create anything other than the actual file. If I open the attribute table, there's nothing there. So the next step is to edit that feature class. So if I go into edit, I can create features. I'm going to create a river feature, and I can specify certain things like, there's some right angles. Run through this and you can kind of see what our options are. So we're going to do this guy. We're just going to click in here and we're just going to follow the river. Now I'm doing this relatively quickly. I could zoom way in and make this way more accurate. The more times I click and the closer I click, the more this river is going to appear to be smooth. Right now you're going to you kind of see it's a little jagged, and that's because of how I didn't space the points really closely. So if we go into this now and open the attribute table or feature class attribute table, you'll see I've got a single polyline and it's got a length. That length is basically in pixels because they haven't specified anything. But you can see that I have a single record in my geodatabase for rivers. And I can do some fun things. You can kind of go into this and we can call it get it a color code that makes a little bit more sense if we like. It's always fun. So the next thing we want to do is something similar. We're going to have to go in and we're going to have to use tools again. And we'll have to create a new feature class. So create feature class again. And this time feature class name we can call forests. And it's going to be a polygon. This is all good. We'll run it. You can watch down here and see, see it run and know that you're making good progress. So then we simply go back in, map, add our data. We'll navigate to our areas, and now you'll see a forest feature class. That's a polygon feature class. If we made this a little bit larger where you could see it, you'd see this icon looks like polygons, and we simply say add. Oh, I've added it twice. Alright, so I'm going to want to modify this to look more like, we can call it a park or forest or something, but something color-wise that makes sense. And then we can go into edit. We're going to modify, or actually we're going to create features. Double click on forest over here. And then we can just kind of do, when you get done, you just double click. And now I can make another one. Again, I can go really short little things like that if I wanted. I don't like how that looks because I misclicked. So I can open my attribute table and I can say I really don't like these two guys, highlight them and just hit delete, and that looks pretty good. So I'm continuing to edit, and I'll just do this guy. I can do short little clicks to make it smooth, or I can be really general and have all sorts of flaws. But for the sake of this demo, just want to show you how to do the editing and what shows up in our attribute table. So I'm just going to come right here, double click. Alright, so I have two polygons. When I open the attribute table now, we'll see two records. One of the cool things we can do with our records is we can highlight our record. And when you highlight the record, that particular feature will get selected inside the map. So you can see, right now this cyan looking perimeter outline. If I select this one, this is the one that gets selected. What's nice about that is as I showed you before, I made an error when I was tracing that forest. I can highlight each polygon and say that's the one I don't want and just hit the delete button. So I'm happy with all of these, so I can close my attribute table, and I'm going to close the create features button, and I'm just going to hit well, that basically is what I wanted to show you. A couple ways that the basic way that you create shapefiles or feature classes in this case, because we build features or feature classes within a geodatabase in ArcGIS Pro. We have a polyline feature class, we have a polygon feature class, we named one a river, it's a single river, so it's one record. And then we have a series of forests. If I were to do all three forests, I would have 3 records in the forest. And then we could create another polygon feature class for the buildings. To some end, if we zoomed way in or way out, we might want to make the buildings points. Right? If I continue to zoom out, right? At some point in time, you could say, well, just put a single point down for the buildings, because what the polygon is doesn't really matter. So just a few ways we can represent this. Other things that we could do is, if we had this road here, and it might be worth doing anyway, but I could create a polyline feature class and call it roads, and I could just have this segment double click in that segment, and then I could have some attributes about it, and maybe that's an interstate highway that's 6 lanes across. Well, I can have that attribute of 6 lanes across in that one record. Then I could connect that portion of the highway here going across, and maybe that's only a 4-lane highway, and so I'll have a new record that's a 4-lane highway, and it's got to be its own record because it's got its own little description of lane width. So that's another way we could do things in here, and what's nice about that is then I could symbolize the road based on the lane width. So I could have different symbolization based on those categories, which you'll explore in your tutorial book on how to do some of that. So that's in a nutshell how we do points, lines, and polygons. I can turn off my background map now, and you'll see, or background raster image, and you'll see my vector data of forests and rivers. We do this for a lot of reasons. We do have remote sensing data pretty regularly collected from space. In fact, Planet Labs captures the entire Earth every day from the remote sensing platform. Most of the time we're not trying to create vector data from it, but this is how we originally got vector data in a GIS. When you think of roads, navigating roads with highway, with car GPSs, how do you get from point A to point B? We had to create raster or vector data from something, and for the most part we created it from remote sensing data. A long time ago it was we took maps that were made from overlapping photos, and we had really high quality maps created from it, and to get those maps into a computer we would scan those maps and digitize the features that way, like I showed you here today. So that's just a little bit of how this stuff works, and hopefully it helps you conceptualize a little bit about how we would digitize a raster data and create points, lines, and polygons from it.